Some of the most attractive people aren't the kindest. They're not the most available. And they definitely don't chase. They're calm, controlled, unreadable, and your brain labels that as high value. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What feels like strength is sometimes just emotional distance dressed as confidence. Your brain is built to chase patterns it can't predict. When someone is inconsistent, emotionally reserved, hard to read, your mind doesn't relax. It locks in because uncertainty activates dopamine, anticipation, cortisol, tension, attention loops, obsession. That mix can feel like attraction, but it's not necessarily connection. It's psychological stimulation. And this is where people get confused. They don't fall for the person. They fall for the feeling of trying to figure them out. Traits like emotional detachment, lack of visible anxiety, low reactivity, often get interpreted as confidence. But in psychology, these can also overlap with traits seen in low empathy personalities. That doesn't make someone powerful. It makes them hard to emotionally access. Here's the difference most people miss. Confidence equals grounded, stable, consistent. Detachment equals distant, inconsistent, unavailable. One builds trust. The other creates chasing behavior. And chasing feels intense. But intensity is not stability. Now the other side. People who try too hard to be liked often over-explain, overgive, overvalidate, tolerate disrespect. Not because they're weak, but because they're afraid of losing connection. And that fear leaks through behavior. In social psychology, this signals, I need approval. And when someone senses that, respect naturally drops. Because value is tied to self-sufficiency, not effort. This is why nice often fails. Not because kindness is unattractive, but because lack of boundaries is. Here's where the idea of dark discipline gets misunderstood. Real discipline is not being cold, ignoring people, playing games. Real discipline is controlling your reactions, not chasing validation, walking away from disrespect, staying consistent under pressure. It looks quiet. It feels boring. But psychologically, it signals high internal control. And that's what people respect. Not aggression, not dominance, but emotional stability. Respect doesn't come from being feared. It comes from being predictable in your standards. When people know, you won't tolerate disrespect. You won't overreact emotionally. You won't chase. They adjust their behavior. Not because you force them, but because your behavior is clear and consistent. That's real power. And it doesn't require manipulation. There's a psychological principle. What's less available feels more valuable. But people misuse this. Disappear become attractive. But forced absence creates confusion. Healthy scarcity comes from having your own life. Not being constantly available. Not prioritizing others over yourself. It's not a tactic. It's a byproduct of self-priority. Here's what rarely gets talked about. People who rely on emotional distance to create attraction often struggle with long-term connection. Create unstable relationships. Attract partners who chase, not connect. Because what they signal is, I'm hard to reach emotionally. That may create desire, but it doesn't build trust. And without trust, relationships collapse. If you want real attraction and respect, you don't need to become colder. You need to become less reactive, more self-defined, clear in your boundaries, comfortable with silence. Because the strongest signal in psychology is not dominance. It's self-control without explanation. So the next time someone says, be colder to become more attractive, understand what they're really noticing. Not coldness, but control. And control doesn't come from shutting down emotions. It comes from not being controlled by them. The goal isn't to become cold. It's to become unshakable. Boundaries aren't walls. They're calibrated signals that say, I know my worth. I act with fairness and consistency. My presence is intentional, not transactional. Treat me accordingly. That kind of clarity doesn't push people away. It filters for those who value integrity, reciprocity, and mutual dignity. Clear boundaries prevent you from overgiving and prevent others from taking your kindness for weakness. This preserves authenticity and prevents bitterness from building up. Delayed response teach others that your time, attention, and energy are finite and precious, not limitless resources to be taken for granted. When people know crossing your line has predictable, fair consequences, they learn to honor your space, not out of dread, but because they trust your fairness and recognize your self-worth. Boundaries improve relationships not by enforcing control, but by establishing respect, value, and emotional safety through consistency, clarity, and consequence. Maintaining a sense of presence and authority is essential for leadership. Practicing boldness allows you to command respect and navigate social situations effectively. A man must project respect and authority to instill fear, not hatred, in others. This reflects the delicate balance between kindness and self-respect in relationships. Emotional detachment is a key strength that allows one to maintain power and control. By avoiding anger, individuals can prevent others from manipulating their emotions effectively. Creating a strategic absence increases your demand and makes people curious about your actions. A strong presence, coupled with emotional resilience, earns trust and respect from others. Understanding the subtlety of power dynamics is crucial in navigating conflicts. Instead of confronting enemies directly, one should employ cunning and strategic silence to outmaneuver them. The psychological mechanisms behind attraction, respect, and relational power, not through manipulation or emotional coldness, but through grounded self-control, clarity of boundaries, and authentic stability. It distinguishes between perceived strength, e.g., emotional detachment, inconsistency, strategic absence, and actual strength, e.g., consistency, self-sufficiency, calm boundary enforcement, revealing how uncertainty-driven neurochemical responses, dopamine, cortisol, and attention loops, can mimic genuine connection. Crucially, it reframes dark discipline as internal regulation rather than external games, emphasizing that lasting respect arises not from dominance, but from predictable integrity, unshakable self-worth.